One of man's basic drives is the pursuit and discovery of truth. But in a world of isms and schisms, perceptions and deceptions, truth seems more elusive, and reality becomes contradictions of our perceptions controlled by our ideologies, the products of human limitations. Nevertheless, throughout history, man has searched for truth, and according to Quandis Callison, film, art, and media have reflected this eternal search for truth. It is no wonder that Professor Bob Clifford would assert that documentary is one of the major achievements of cinema and film. Implicit in this assertion is the argument posited by film scholars such as Vertov, John Roach, Richard Leacock, and Fred Wiseman that documentary films seek for truth or realism that has never before been achieved or represented in films. Hence the term cinema verite or direct cinema, which uncovers the truth in cinema. This style of filmmaking, cinema verite, used a revolutionary style that exceptionalized and characterized documentary films from non-fictional films. Further, Clifford postulates that films not only seek truth but entertain, express artistry, and provide social critique for social change. However, it is documentary film, given their peculiar production, styles, and methodologies, that usually fulfill the latter goal. Anti-imperialist schools of thought championed and adopted documentary filmmaking to represent a truth that was hidden from the dominated imperialist world. Documentary filmmaking strategies sought to override and impugn neoliberal propaganda and highlight globalization's devastating effects on the dominated global south, whose countervailance tactics are futile against the bureaucratic phenomena. And so, in Chapter 11, which was the concluding chapter of Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance, I pen that particular excerpt that I just read and lift up two films, Dirty Pretty Things and, of course, Life and Death. But that was the beginning, and I begin by saying cinema and globalization. Can cinematic film be an effective tool in creating change in light of globalization? Probably the answer to neoliberalism lies in film. And of course, I begin by saying one of man's basic drive is the pursuit and discovery of truth. But in a world of isms and schisms, perceptions and deceptions, truth seems more elusive, and reality becomes contradictions of our perceptions, controlled by our ideologies, the products of human limitations. Nevertheless, throughout history, man has searched for truth, and it is documentary film making and the kind of filmmaking that highlights the tragedies and the disasters and the stealth that creates the problems in society that might be the answer. So I concluded by saying neoliberal globalization has downplayed the value of immigrants from the global south. It has created tremendous opportunities for many, but it has adversely affected the lives of people who it has fragmented, marginalized, and abused. The impact of globalization on the human bodies that are integral to the global economy is grossly understated and overstated because of the invisibility necessary for profit. This invisibility seems like a fairy tale story, thus blending fact with fantasy. However, this is strangely true. The global human eyes are blind to some of the most intricate and inhumane realities of this postmodern world. We're oblivious to the mechanical economic order that has created invisible people, usually of color and from the global south, and as a consequence they are susceptible to economic and sexual exploitation. However, Dirty Pretty Things exposes this once hidden conspiracy, thereby granting agency to illegal immigrants who were largely unseen and unheard as they worked behind the scenes in inhumane and unpleasant conditions, serving Western societies, so on and so forth. And so we get to book 2. We'll be right back with more in 5 minutes, because coming up next, I will talk about how the Neoliberalism podcast is ranking and how we're doing, and to encourage you to continue to support us and to say thank you. We'll be right back after this. Welcome to another episode of the Neoliberalism podcast. Thank you for making us a top-ranking podcast. And of course, we continually need your support. In 2021, we created 4,808 minutes of new content. That's more than 96% of other categories, of other podcasts in this category. And we want to appreciate your support and the fact that you continue to listen to us. And we are growing. When we started the podcast in 2021, it was about the themes from my book, Neoliberalism, but it has transcended that. This year we looked at themes such as what's happening in the Russia-Ukraine war, which was the #1 podcast in 2022. Now, the podcast travels the world, and of course, the book talks about globalization, neoliberalism, globalization, income inequality, poverty, and resistance, was the main reason why I started this book. Started the podcast. I was blogging, and then I started to and then somebody sent me a link to Anchor, and then I started to do podcasting, which I believe is a powerful platform to share your ideas, and a powerful platform for persons who are independent and grassroots to get the word out and to begin to develop reputation. Now, something magical happened between March 13 and March 19. I had 640% more listeners compared to my average week, and that was remarkable. I think that was the first week I did the podcasts about Russia and Putin's speech. Now, whoever said sharing is caring? Whoever said sharing is caring? Now, the podcast, I understand, is among the top 5% globally in terms of shared podcasts. So thank you so much for making the podcast the top 5 among the top 5% podcasts that's shared globally. So thank you so much. Now, there is a question that I have for you in terms of followed podcasts. You have followed podcasts and listened podcasts. You have people who listen to podcasts, but you have people who listen to and followed podcasts. We are in the top 21% of podcasts where people not only listen to us, but they are following us. And we want to thank you so much that if you are listening to this podcast, you might also be following this podcast. And we want to thank you, and we appreciate you. Now, what are the Neoliberalism listeners like exactly? What are you guys like? And apparently Spotify, the statisticians did crunch some numbers and some personality checks and so on. And according to the blue ball or the yellow ball, it says your listener's podcast personality is the enthusiast. The enthusiast. Why? It says your listeners are super fans. When their favorite podcast releases a new episode, they are the first to tune in. So that is great. So thank you guys so much. And I'm an enthusiast as well. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And there is some more information that you want to hear. We released 10 videos in 2022. We actually released more than 10 videos because I think we released about 4 or 5 more podcasts after this was done. And of course, I'm reading from a slideshow which we actually look at. If you look at the bonus video, you find that. But we created 5 polls and 46 questions and answers. 5 polls and 46 questions and answers. Now, as it relates to, we have some more actually, some more information. Oh, according to the stats, the analysts, we've been working out, and yes, I have been working out the neoliberal round. We have, in terms of podcast hours, 942% increase in hours, 744% increase in listeners, and 650% increase in followers. That's tremendous feat. 952% increase in hours, 744% increase in listeners, and I believe this is just. Well, I don't know if this is just on Spotify or everywhere. You and your fans have something special. So I have something special with you guys. And what is that? I'm not sure what that is. It says you're a top 5 podcast for 33 fans. So 33 of my fans, my podcast is rated among the top 5. And in terms of 18 of my fans, I am the Neoliberal Round is the number 1 podcast for 18 fans. So we are top 5 among 33 fans, number 1 among 18 fans. And we thank you for that. So the Neoliberal Round podcasts, according to the analysts, thank you for sharing the podcast. Thank you for listening to the podcast and for sharing it with the world. Continue to support us at https://anchor.fm/the-neoliberal/support. And we are on several platforms. We are on Heart Radio, Amazon, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, the Alexa app, the Audible, Amazon Music, so on and so forth. Kobo, Podvine, theneoliberal.com and RonaldoCMcKenzie.com. This is the Neoliberal Round Podcast. Now, let's pick up from where we left off, looking at Neoliberalism Book 2, moving beyond the global South to consider the global North. Neoliberalism, and that's from the concluding chapters in book 1, Neoliberalism Book 1. And if you remember Neoliberalism Book 1, in the preface I begin by saying, when we hear of Jamaica or the Caribbean, we think of beautiful islands of paradise with sun, sea, and sand, reggae music, cannabis, and irie people like Usain Bolt, people who are living out their best dreams, desires, and lives. But this book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance, analyzes this motif given the historical and current economic and political situation in Jamaica and the Caribbean and the global South. In an attempt to escape the adverse realities of poverty, inequality, and injustice, the people of the global South find themselves in North metropolises with very little agency and minimal change to their lives. In fact, except for the use of cleaning neoliberal waste, the immigrant is usually portrayed as an alien with 3 heads and big sharp teeth, seeking to steal and destroy the profit and disrupt society. As such, we had discussed in Neoliberalism Book 1, Black, Brown, and Pan-African struggle for economic prosperity, justice and freedom, and consider efforts, abilities, or inabilities to chart their course and futures since decolonization and realize real political independence and economic prosperity. And so we move beyond Neoliberalism Book 1 to consider the global North, post-industrial countries, former colonial countries. What has been the efforts? What has been the issue with globalization? And so I begin Neoliberalism Book Book 2. And the title of Neoliberal Globalization, the title of the Book 2 is Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered, and the Black Position, looking at the socio-economic effects and consequences of neoliberal globalization and an analysis of the social, political, and activist response to neoliberalism. And of course, I start by saying I dedicate this book to my dad, who was given a basic education up to the 9th grade, where he could and needed only to barely read, write, or spell. Yet the expectations on him were great: to become an adult, raise a family while working in an industry requiring basic education, getting base pay. But through trial and error, raise 6 children, one of whom has written several books and completing academic studies at the highest and most prestigious levels. The cycle would continue, but some slip through the cracks, now working to make it bigger for those coming behind us until there's nothing to hold us back. So, to what extent has neoliberal globalization affected the working class and the black diaspora in the global south and global north? And for our study, the Caribbean and the United States, with references in other countries and peoples throughout. Further, how have these peoples responded in spite of capitalist structures to avert retaliatory insurgencies to its power? We explored in Book 1, Neoliberalism, which we just lifted up just now, neoliberalism as the concept and practice of neoliberal globalization as a historical phenomenon and neoliberal strategy of power beginning in the 16th century when capitalism replaced feudalism. The study, conducted while at the University of Pennsylvania and currently at Georgetown University, provided a dynamic and comprehensive academic context within which the subject matter was and is being explored. The experience working under the guidance and tutelage of academics and scholars such as Rita Bernard, Martin Oppenheimer, Anne-Louise Antonoff, Philippe Bourgeois, Walter Litt, Andrew Lamas, and Ori Sotis helped to facilitate the investigation of neoliberal globalization, uncovering its assertions and discovering its actual realities. But it is Professor Emeritus Martin Oppenheimer's mentorship, our reflections, and working together that has helped to develop this volume analyzing neoliberal globalization, or the new capitalism and hegemony in society. Therefore, Book 2, Neoliberalism Reconsidered, or Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered. This book is the continuation and updated analysis of neoliberal globalization, and our purposes here are to present a general framework through which we can further understand how neoliberal globalization has created both a challenge for some and an opportunity for others, which has largely resulted in the mixed results among peoples and places based on the makeup of certain racial groups or historical dynamic that pertains in society today. This may be understood within the foundations of knowledge and the hegemony of faith, where throughout the study of civilizations, mankind has sought to privilege themselves and justify their power through created ideas or strategies, and we will begin to delve into these as we reconsider neoliberal globalization within the dynamic of class and racial struggle for dominance. This is the Neoliberal Round, brought to you by the Neoliberal Corporation, serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges. Thank you for listening to the Neoliberal Round podcast. This is the first in a series that's looking at Neoliberalism Book 2. And of course, we have several other interviews and breaking stories that's coming up right here on the Neoliberal Round podcast, and several other projects that we will be working on. Visit us at www.theneoliberal.com, and we plan to update that particular website with some more stories and articles and commentaries. Look out for an updated content on that. You can check out our Twitter pages, Ronaldo McKenzie, or the Neoliberal Co. Check out our Facebook pages, Ronaldo McKenzie, Ronaldo C. McKenzie, or the Neoliberal Corporation, or the Neoliberal Corp. Or we are also on Instagram, and we are also on Reddit and on LinkedIn, the Neoliberal Corporation and Ronaldo C. McKenzie. Continue to follow us, and please, if you haven't gotten your copy of Neoliberalism Book 1, Neoliberalism Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, it's available, and it's also available at zero cost on the Audible at a promotional price if you, I think, for 30 days. And we are also one, and just so you know, I want to give a shout out to Kenneth O'Connor and Winston McKenzie, who have been contributing to the podcast religiously every month as their small contributions. And you too can contribute, like Kenneth and Winston, who you can contribute 99 cents, you can contribute 4.99, 2.99, whatever the cost, however small it may be, you're welcome. Or you can contribute a one-time fee. Also share the show with your friends and let us know how we're doing so that we can improve. This is the Neoliberal Corporation. We want to wish you and your family a happy holidays. Of course, we will continue to produce some more. We will continue to put out some more podcasts before Christmas, so we'll have some more time to talk about Christmas. And we hope to have some a special podcast episode with music and so on. This is the Neoliberal Round Corporation, or the Neoliberal Round, sorry, brought to you by the Neoliberal Corporation, and I am Ronaldo McKenzie. Welcome.